news for them, 9 million. However, 4 weeks away, and I'm pumped because where I'm at the minute is I'm at Martin Stadium, which is the home of Washington State, because that clearly is in Washington, because the Pacific Northwest is clearly where the big fucking stadium show is going to be held, because that's what I learned from watching AEW this week, because it was all about Pacific Northwest law, and the 77,000 tickets out show that you've got coming up in 4 weeks had a big fat fucking zero stuff announced for it. If there wasn't the pictures in the corner of the arena, in like the posters up, the banners, you wouldn't have known that they were having this kind of show. And this is the biggest show in their history.
It's unbelievable because, like, it was one of them. We've been patient, because I think obviously this news should be celebrated. Paul White's over, even Jeff Jarrett was over doing the circuit. They are doing a lot of the right things. The ads on buses. There's a reason they've hit 70,000. But I would argue half of the reason that we're now talking about AEW having 70,000 tickets sold for a show, near on 80,000 as far as like in attendance goes, it's kind of like a circular thing. We're all excited for it, and we bought all those tickets because it's a big event, and it's a big event because we bought the tickets. It's kind of like it's like a circle, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like it's an event. It's gigantic. We all got excited when the tickets went on sale. At the start, I didn't expect to get anywhere near this, but it kind of snowballed, and that excitement was palpable. Of, oh my god! Not only is the UK getting an AEW pay-per-view, at least we thought. We actually still don't know that at this point, but we're getting the biggest AEW show of all time. And not only the biggest AEW show of all time, JP, based on those numbers that Meltzer's got in the Observer and what we're trending towards, potentially the biggest wrestling show of all time, at least as far as attendance goes. I made the joke to you before, many multiples, the amount of people who even bought the ROH pay-per-view last week are going to be just in the building. Never mind, as far as like a worldwide audience or whatever. And that excitement, they rode that excitement. That's why this has done so well. And now that Dynamite aired on Wednesday night, I stayed up and watched it live. Maybe more fool me for being that guy, thinking Blood and Guts is out the way. Okay, fair enough. There's going to be All Out that they're going to have to promote. I hadn't really considered the fact that this 200th Dynamite was so important, but I gather from Meltzer's reporting, and I understand that's important to TBS, TNT, Warner Brothers, whatever you want to call it. Like, that's a massive deal. So, fair enough. But and, Tony Khan as well. He's Tony Khan. This happens most pay-per-views, we're 3 or 4 weeks out. And we're like, all right, let's get with announcing the matches. But again, this is a 70 to 80, but to potentially 90,000 seater stadium show. This is the biggest thing AEW will probably ever do.
Yeah.
It's even if you're like, well, that's the way Tony Khan does things. This has to be the exception to the rule. Like, we shouldn't be scratching our asses watching Dynamite, watching, I love AR Fox, but half an hour dedicated to AR Fox and a 3-way main event that, like, is apparently building a 3-way feud between, Lucha Brothers' best friends and the Blackpool Combat Club. And I've genuinely no clue what's going to be on Wembley. Now, we can maybe put little bits together. MJF and Adam Cole basic seems likely, but that could be All Out. We don't know. We don't know that for certain until Collision happens this weekend. It's likely, but we don't know. There's little, there's news and rumors we can get into, that have come out the last couple of days. Fightful reporting via New Japan that they believe Will Ospreay, Chris Jericho is a match. I can get into my thoughts on that. Meltzer is getting conflicting reports about a potential tag team match involving Kota Ibushi and Kenny Omega with Jericho on the other side, which is a wild thing. But it's all speculation, JP, because we are closing in. In fact, we are 4 weeks out from the biggest show of all time. And we've got no clue what the matches are. Like, none. Like, it's all guesswork. Like, we joked about this happening. It's happened. It's really happening, JP. Yeah. Most likely, with Dynamite 200 coming up, it's going to be 3 weeks out before we actually start getting going on all this stuff. And just, you can defend Tony Khan all you want on a regular pay-per-view cycle, and I'd argue you then. But for this, it's unbelievable.
Oh, I mean, I say angry is not really. I wouldn't go that far with it, but like it's so disappointing because this is like this for us is like a massive show. We've had to wait and wait and wait for this company to come over. Obviously, with the pandemic and everything else, to the point where like you think we're owed stuff back. Dare I say it? There's nowhere else they've been, nowhere else, no other area in the US and Canada they've been to where they've had this level of sort of demand for it. So you would think that this would focus the mind. And it's so important for them as a show because they kind of need to hit a home run for this. They really do. You can't overfill this at the last minute with stuff that you've just randomly put together on TV or just announced without any kind of a build. Like we've seen also how WWE do shows and the way that even they're building to SummerSlam and stuff. And they seem to have that in place like a good while ago. We kind of knew the basic layout of it, even around like Money in the Bank time. It wasn't something. And so this is kind of inexcusable. It's always like, well, there's blood and guts in the way, or there's this match that we're going to. It's like you should have the direction in place. So you shouldn't be afraid of announcing some of this stuff when we get to it. And instead, you talk about MJF Adam Cole. The thing is, as much as I hate it, it's working, and therefore, wouldn't they be rather daft to then break it up now? If that was the case. But there isn't any, doesn't feel like the matches that are announced are kind of like it feels like they're holding off and they shouldn't be holding off. And be damned with All Out. Really. All Out should not be the focus on this. We don't even know if it's going to be on TV in this country. About being on Bleacher Report, and we don't even know, there's no official announcement for that. And we're 4 weeks out. And like, you know, Dave talks about it in the Observer, and I kind of agree with him. For them, it's just like if you're not going to, why they're putting on pay-per-view, I don't know. When they should just be putting this on Max and making this just like the event that basically resets AEW in a sense in the minds of people of what the potential of it can be. And we're not getting any level of excitement for it, and a kind of what seems to be quite muddled card with stuff that really should just be headlining a Dynamite.
Well, yeah, and that's it. Because, like, you know, we're not just. I know that's a worn talking point of like AEW pay per views. I think we've made the point, and we've kind of been like, you know, what the fuck, Tony? How are we 2 weeks out when you haven't announced everything? And the arguments, oh, don't worry, it's gonna come together. And most of the time, it does come together, and we get a great show. But again, I can't, undersell this. This is the biggest show they'll ever do. It is more important than a run-of-the-mill pay-per-view. And what I kind of feel right now is if, and again, this is all self-inflicted, doing All Out the week after All In, deciding Blood and Guts to be last week. Even the 200th Dynamite seems a bit shaky when it comes to the counting, but, whatever, that's a given. And an anniversary is an anniversary. But you've chosen to celebrate that, and you've chosen to thread this needle. But I think however way you slice it, 3 weeks to build the biggest show of all time isn't enough. Like this show should have the biggest stars in AEW wrestling each other. That seems like an obvious thing to say, but I don't think it's going to happen now. Like I genuinely don't, because I think look at the things that are going on right now. What's rumored, so let's say Jericho Ospreay happens. That's not really to my taste, but all right, fine. That's a couple of stars to a point with Ospreay, but overall working each other. All right, maybe there's a counter there. Who's Kenny Omega kind of feuding with right now? Well, if he's not going to be working Ospreay, it's probably Takeshita, who is somebody lower down on the totem pole than him. Great match. Well, I'm sure it will be. Relatively well-told story. Based on Dynamite this week, Jon Moxley and Orange Cassidy looks like it might be a thing, potentially, for All In and All Out. Again, Orange Cassidy, very over, great act. But obviously a couple of notches below Jon Moxley. Like I said, Jericho, if he's not in the Ospreay thing, he's in a story with the Jericho Appreciation Society right now. MJF's in a story with Adam Cole. CM Punk is in a story with Ricky Starks. With 3 weeks to go, I don't think any of that's changing. You can't magic up two of the genuine big, let's say in a dream world, Hangman Page and CM Punk was going to be a match or something like that. I know with the backstage politics, it's not going to be, but that type of gigantic,
Mm.
top guys going against each other in a real meaningful feud. You're not going to be able to build up in 3 weeks. Like there isn't. That's just not going to happen at this point. It's
No.
probably just going to be the matches it feels like it might be, guessing based on what the booking's been this last while. I really think it's going to be a bog standard AEW pay-per-view if we know it's going to be a pay-per-view.
Yeah.
Like, it's not going to be the MJF versus CM Punk or, something like that. Maybe that gets going on Collision tomorrow. I look a bit stupid there. I hope I do. But my feeling on it right now is I don't think Tony's leaning that way with it. Like, I just don't understand how you could have like 3 matches on top that are 3 of your biggest stars, pick any combination of them against each other with 3 weeks build. I think we're just getting a run-of-the-mill AEW show.
And that's shocking. And it makes me fear that the big advance and the big numbers kind of let them take their foot off the gas. Because you wonder if tickets hadn't gone as quickly, what they were going to do to try and build for it, for example. We spoke about things like a Sting retirement match. No, not even remotely like a hint of that happening. And if, like you say, they do it, it's starting to just drop stuff into the well. I was hoping for MJF Goldberg, personally. For that, I think that would be like an awesome 5-minute match to be at live. However, I think...
You might get Rob Van Dam, mate, if you're lucky.
Oh, yeah. Jesus Christ. I'd pop. Actually, he would get a big enough pop, but the match would happen on there. But there's other things as well, like, for example, there's not going to be Jamie Hayter. So one of the things was kind of like a hook for me was actually this was the time to kind of make her the UK star of your company, the person you've had since early days and is like one of the homegrowns. But it doesn't look like we're gonna get her there. It feels like it's building to Britt Baker versus Tony Storm on that front. That doesn't feel exciting. What about the tag titles? Well, it kind of depends what happens with Collision. Do you get an MJF Adam Cole tag title defense? Which might, against the Young Bucks or whatever. I'm fearing you're going to get the Young Bucks and Adam Page versus the Dark Order at this, which is like, I think it's fucking outrageous, by the way. Like, it is
Young
just
Bucks FDR or don't have them on the fucking card, is my opinion.
Don't bother.
I mean, they're teasing that a little bit. Maybe the seeds for that. Maybe that's a big match you can do. I just think all of the big stars should be in big matches. Moxley, Omega, Hangman, the Young Bucks, CM Punk, if Brian was healthy, there you guys. All of these guys, Sting even, and Jericho. As much as again the Ospreay match fills me with dread. All of those guys should be in big time matches that fit a stadium. And all of the cards I'm seeing people fantasy book based on what we can kind of string together from the shows right now just feel underwhelming. It's again, I don't think Americans understand. Like, we are 4 weeks away. You absolutely want to go for the record. You want to shift another 10,000 tickets, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe even 15 if you can mess around with the setup. But if you're going to do that, Europe's a smallish place. But if people are going to make travel plans, even from other ends of England, the people who haven't bought a ticket yet, you want to sweep them up in the excitement. What have we been saying for weeks and months? The thing that's going to grab those last few people is, well, what are you announcing? People, matches? What's the exciting thing that's going to get this kind of ball going and go, oh, fuck yeah, All In's in 4 weeks and this match is on it? That's the only way you can do it at this point. And the closer you leave it, if Tony Khan is thinking of waiting, maybe he's waiting for Ospreay to get out of the G1, and there's a couple of talent like that at Eddie Kingston, and they're going to do all that setup the week before. Again, it's a stadium show. You want people to travel. You want it to be a big deal. You need to get going with that now, and I don't think that urgency is there based on this Dynamite this week.
No, that urgency isn't there as well. There was also another report. This is again, it's Dave Meltzer talking. I don't think he's wrong, but the merchandise stuff. This comes back to the idea of AEW. Like, these are the real growing pains, is the kind of infrastructure stuff where people who are completely in a stone-faced manner going, we have this to build to, we should be building to this, and not getting distracted by whatever nonsense. Because again, like you, I quite like AR Fox, but the idea that this was viewed as like, it's a dead week, So really, we'll just put these things on. We've got Dynamite 200 next week, and there's a big stadium show going like fucking over here. What about us? Like, it is ridiculous. Like,
There should be a WrestleMania build.
Yeah.
I mean, I love AR Fox. He shouldn't be in sight. The fucking best friends shouldn't be in sight. You can't reach up the Lucha Brothers right now based on the fallout of an ROH pay-per-view that, again, has been seen by 8 times less people than will be in this fucking building. This is not the time. This is WrestleMania season. This is 4 weeks before WrestleMania, and all the big stars should be on all the fucking shows talking, setting up angles and setting up matches. Where were the Young Bucks this week? Where was Hangman Page? Where was Kenny Omega? It's their fucking show. Why is John Moxley fucking messing around with the best friends? What are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah. I would say, of those, Moxley Orange Cassidy is like, I think holds
for all out.
But then I would agree with you. If there was 2 other big matches there and you were doing a match like that, I'd be like, oh, okay. But unfortunately, it's like, this shouldn't be the thing where I'm thinking, oh, this is kind of really the most interesting thing coming into it. It shouldn't be. If it was 3rd, 4th on the list, I go, that's kind of cool because Orange Cassidy's, like you say, really good wrestler, really over, great title run. He's up against a big star here. It kind of like raises the whole international title to a level that TNT title hasn't got to. But we shouldn't be talking about that as like these are the kind of big matches. I mean, I'm not keen on MJF Adam Cole, like, but again, I could see them going, we'll do that at All Out. And they've put themselves in this situation with this, like, and it's holding.
Adam Cole's not going to beat MJF. Like, if it was Hangman Page MJF, for example, or like whoever the next champion was going to be, if you're going to do a big title change at some point with MJF, whether it's Punk, be now, surely that'll be the time. Even Punk, I'm into the Ricky Stark story. It's a well-told. That exactly what you said then. If that's a match on a show where there's bigger stuff, cool. But then to do the bigger stuff, you probably need Punk involved. So, same argument, isn't it? Is what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's the combinations. And I think we've spoken about this before, where there's stuff like where they've missed opportunities. And maybe this is where the increased pay-per-view schedule and the idea they'll have to go to stuff. I think that's where your theory on that really holds because of the way he books. That's where it's really credible as a result. Where you go, actually, it forces him to get a move on. And it also forces him, I think, to put fresh matchups together. But this is the place where you should be saving big stuff for. It is the biggest moment of all of these wrestlers' careers. Is being at this show. This will be the biggest crowd that they will ever have done. And we're including like a Daniel Bryan and CM Punk who've worked manias in the mix here as well. Like, this is absolutely fucking serious. Like, Sting has not done had a crowd like this. And I don't know if he was in North Korea for that. I doubt it. I think he wouldn't have enjoyed it. But at the same time, like, we are like we're getting close to it, and it probably sounds there'll be some people who see us on YouTube and go, oh, complaining.
It sounded baited. That's because we are.
Yeah, like we are. It's just you hit a point with this where it's like, actually, this is about a general level of competency because it doesn't bode well for All Out and it doesn't bode well for Arthur Ashe. And they're having these big shows and they're kind of winging it. And basically the good wrestling on the day will save them. And I go, but it's more than that. You can have good wrestling on the day for that crowd and it'll work. I don't know how many of them will come back. Because they'll come back and go, yeah, it was fun, but it wasn't this mega event that makes me into like a big proper fan. And I want to go and see them when they inevitably oversaturate and they're here for like a month at a time doing tapings and the rest of it. But like, that's what they should be aiming for. Like, why aren't they like the ITV stuff?
It's for the taking. Like, WWE have neglected us for so long, and now they're paying attention. Now they, is it money in the bank? Now they're doing stuff like that. Like, this is your chance to be the number one in the UK. Be what TNA. We're going to talk about them in a bit. Could have been if they'd have maybe focused, and we all kind of fantasy booked that in at the point where they were doing great over here, and WWE wasn't doing so well. Like, it literally is that big, isn't it? Like, I think my biggest shock, JP, was like that's it. It's like, if we sound impatient, okay. If we turn out to be wrong and Collision sets up 4 dream matches for the show, and it turns out to be fucking, because that's what you should be talking here. Dream matches. It's a stadium show. I'll be happy to be wrong. If next week's Dynamite, turns out to be, or they use the tune of the show to set up all these great angles, they're going to be perfect for Wembley. I'd be happy to eat crow, but like, it just this week's Dynamite didn't fill me with any confidence. Like, there was a mention of Wembley at the start when Excalibur said we're on the road to Wembley. Did it come up again the entire show? Like, it should be the focus of every character on the show, shouldn't it? Like, say, like Rover keeps joking about the fucking steamship should be on the way over with all the t-shirts. To your point before, like that should be taken care of, and every single wrestler should be talking about All In. Should be the fucking Poochie effect, shouldn't it? Yeah. Don't go as far as WrestleMania. I don't need people pointing at signs, but yeah, that's what this should be. I mean, how many YouTube videos do you make of is All In going to be AEW's WrestleMania? Probably not, based on the evidence of this week's Dynamite.
And that's tragic because the chance is there, the opportunity is there, like you say, and they really, really, really need to take advantage of that. And
does Jericho Ospreay float your boat at all?
Because I've got in my head Ospreay Omega 3 seemed like the most logical thing to have, actually, like the amazing match of the night. Because then it felt like, well, that was kind of in the bag. Plus, it's a big enough match for you to do there as one of those, like, kind of, because it's the conclusion to this trilogy, and it would be a lot more interesting.
New Japan must have just had dibs on it. It must have just been a case of I bet that was always going to be a Wrestle Kingdom match, and we all worked ourselves into a shoot. And Jericho being Jericho was like, hang on, Ospreay's not going to be on the show, and he's on Rev Pro the night before, and it's an 80,000 seater stadium, and I could be the babyface. Like he's thinking Fozzy sing along with 80,000 people. Jericho's gonna win, isn't he? He's got it his way there. That's 100%. I think the conversation that happened there, and that's how
New Japan come out in a vest. You come out dressed like Freddie Mercury. Like you would do the vest, white jeans, like the whole lot. But like you say, that feels like someone politicking his way into a match, which we're gonna get that moment. Now, if it was part of some like JAS multi-man brawl around the stadium or whatever, I'd be kind of fine with that. I wouldn't have an issue against I'd
have done him thing.
But yeah, him and Sting. There is much more interesting. Like that would be kind of more interesting. This is just him. It just takes away from what, if you are having Ospreay on the show, of what do you want him there for? You want him there to put on the best match possible. Well, he's not going to do that against Jericho.
It's happening the night before, mate, at Rev Pro. That's when that's happening. Ospreay Shingo. That's at least we know Ospreay's going to go 100 miles an hour in that one. He's not going to be saving himself for a match with Chris Jericho if it's happening, or a tag based on.
Is that the other thinking as well? Is it's kind of night off after the Shingo match?
Maybe.
Which is an insane way of thinking, but.
Yeah, I just think the Omega match was never in consideration. I think that was always coming. It's very interesting the way the information is kind of filtered out. But yeah, I mean, it's more like it. But that's one where it's like wishing on a monkey's paw stuff, because I was making all these complaints all over the internet yesterday, and then that got leaked, and I was like, oh, I suppose it's a couple of big stars. I just don't really want to see it. I think it's like you say, there's a lot more interesting things with Ospreay. I think John's saying it doesn't make sense in AEW canon. I think. Yeah. It'll end up the Callis Jericho thing is Willy Wonky, and you could theoretically have Callis with Jericho, and have Ospreay as the face. You could most likely have Ospreay as the heel, which actually doesn't make a lot of sense in the UK, and Jericho gets to be the face and gets to do his sing along. But I think there's a way you can get there. I just kind of hoping that report is wrong, to be honest. More than that. But that's what we'll hold on to. That a Jericho Ospreay match. That's our dream match, mate, coming out of this Dynamite.
It's not a dream match. Will it be over? This is almost like the stuff with Dynamite that is kind of like the issue. I go, this is good for the house, and don't get me wrong, that's important. Does it come across as good TV? Is it like a book, like from afar, within the kind of people following it as a week-to-week TV product? Does it kind of make sense, or is it the best thing to do? It's like, no. And at times it feels like we're being held back on the stuff that should be happening for this because of reasons that could be sorted out, but it requires a firm hand, and that's not what we have.